Mr. Anarino is joining us, so that's great. We are in excess of a quorum, so Mr. Chairs, just a couple of reminders, just to make sure that we typically stay muted unless we're planning to speak or needing to speak, and that that'll help with the clarity of things as it's discussed. And we are now broadcasting. So with that, Mr. Chair, we can convene the meeting.
Very good. Yeah, thank you, Jim. Your co-chairs had a brief discussion earlier this morning, and I've agreed to kick off agenda item number 2, since we've already done the call to order. Agenda item number 2, which is RTA 14, the City of Tucson's project, which I will discuss, and then John will take over RTA 13, which is the county's northern portion of First Avenue. Let me begin by asking the task force members, you received the 2 draft reports yesterday sometime. Do you feel like you had enough time to review the reports in advance of today's meeting, that we can have a meaningful discussion? And if anyone doesn't feel that they just let me know. Otherwise, I'll assume that, since the documents were relatively brief, that you had enough time to read them and formulate an opinion one way or the other. So, anybody?
I have certainly done that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Frank and Bob. So very good. So the draft for both of these reports has the same format. Some of you have seen this before. Basically, it begins with a kind of a header that just describes the project, the scope of the task force review, which in this case is the proposal to remove one through lane in each direction on First Avenue, all other elements of the project and all other functionalities remaining the same. We talked then about project history and project budget, project schedule, and so on. So that's all somewhat perfunctory, so I'm not going to spend much time going through that. But I think that the salient part on both of our project reviews for today is basically what findings we might have, and what recommendations we would have moving forward. So, as you'll recall, the task force requested the City of Tucson and their consulting team to do a little bit more technical analysis, and a very nice, brief, succinct, and well-written report was provided to us via the city, prepared by Kittleson Engineering, Jim Shane and his people, and that really is the kind of the supporting technical analysis for both of our First Avenue projects. But anyhow, the upshot of it all really, for the city's portion, I'm not going to read this because we can all read it, and Jim has already made this available. Jim DeGrood has made this available to the jurisdiction, and I think, Jim, it was posted also as a public document. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We posted 4 items, 2 at the beginning of the day yesterday, which were the 2 report versions. They're available on the RTA website, particularly if you were to go to the RTA library and look it up, you could find it. We also received 2 letters, one from the county, from Administrator Lesher, and a second that was received from Mr. Razma, the manager for the town of Marana. Those were posted later in the day yesterday. Those have been up at least 24 hours, though.
Okay, thanks.
And we have communicated, or we did send copies of the reports to representatives of the city and to the county.
Good. Okay. So the 2 governmental administrator letters refer primarily to the county's project, RTA 13, but also have some general comments about basically some recommendations on what to do about these scope revisions in general. So, okay, so that's good. So basically, the majority findings on this.
Just one comment before you go on with that. I would hate to exclude Mr. Huckleberry's letter, which is also in the county comments, and that is listed here, even though it's in
Right.
2021 letter, but about a current position. But I think it's important to mention that Jan Lesher's comment is there as well as Mr.
Right. Yeah, I think Chuck's letter was an attachment to Jan's, and you're right. That's an important one. That set the ball moving for the county's proposed revisions. But anyhow, getting back to the city's portion, based on the technical analysis, and really, I'm going to err on the side of brevity here. There really are no issues with the revised and updated forecast as far as the performance of the corridor is concerned. And, the city has provided that technical analysis originally. It was updated in conjunction with RTA staff. And the numbers just clearly show that there are not likely to be any congestion-related issues on the First Avenue corridor within the horizon of the revised forecast. So basically, the recommendation of this is to recognize that the revised cross-section, the 4-lane cross-section, will work just fine as far as we can tell at the planning level right now. That more detailed traffic engineering studies will be conducted during the design phase. And at that time, it's appropriate to look at additional turn lanes or through lanes that might be needed at the cross-street intersections. As you notice in the Kittleson's report, there were some level of service F movements during the peak period at the 2045 build-out on several of the cross streets, and that can be easily resolved during the design phase. So, I'm confident that those level of service Fs will be improved to D, level service D or E later on. That's typically what happened. So anyhow, the upshot of this all really is to pass forward to the technical management committee and then forward to the RTA board and the regional council, whoever else is going to look at this, that we don't foresee any problems with the city's proposal. We also think that as a result of the fairly significant public involvement efforts that the city undertook, that if this proposed scope is sent back to the voters with the RTA next for inclusion in phase 5 of the RTA, that it's more than likely that it will be approved by the voters. So basically what it says is we have support for the project. It does have public involvement that shows support for the revised scope, but the one thing that's lacking is voter reconfirmation of the revised, or voter confirmation of the revised project, which can happen at what we've termed as the forthcoming RTA next ballot. So that's the upshot of it all. And if the task force members have anything additional, see any wording that you'd like changed, any typos, any expletives that may have snuck their way in there, we'll get those all fixed. But other than that, we're open for discussion on this, and any comments, we can revise this as we see fit. So I'll leave it open for discussion. Frank, Bob, John.
I think you've done a good job of summarizing it, Kurt. I don't have anything to add right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, Kurt. Just one point of clarification, I guess. We're extending the recommendations for 14 and probably 13 too into RTA next. Isn't there any work that's ongoing in this period now?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Bob, because one of the recommendations for RTA 14 is that the city could very well move forward with design of their portion of the project at risk in anticipation of the imminent voter approval on it. And it's up to would be up to the city and the RTA to define what at risk means. At risk to who and by whom. So,
Okay.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks. So I'm okay with it. John's okay. Frank and Bob seem to be okay. Bill is not here. So that seems to be 4 out of 5. So I guess what I'll just do is just call for a vote on this to move this forward. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand or nod. And
Aye.
Aye.
all right.
Aye.
Aye. So, Mr. DeGroot, we have a unanimous vote amongst the 4 members present today.
Kurt,
Yeah,
Kurt,
go ahead.
You've got Robin's hand up.
Yeah, oh, okay. I can't see that where my screen is set up. So, yeah, Robin, I don't know, you just got this yesterday as well. So I'm assuming that the city is going to take a position and have something in writing for us to consider. So with that said, go ahead and make your comments, please, Robin.
I really just have a question, Mr. Chairs, and that is when I read the letter or the report, whatever you want to call it, it basically said that that was the minority opinion that it needed to go back to the voters. So my question is that if any projects with the RTA or are downscope, is it this subcommittee's position that must go back to the voters?
Well, Robin, I don't know if I can speak for the whole group, but my personal opinion on this is that RTA Next needs a much better and robust procedure for dealing with scope modifications for projects in the future. You know, hypothetically, if we recognize, say, 5 years in that this particular project would function perfectly well as 4 lanes rather than 6, it certainly wouldn't make any sense to make a recommendation to float this back out to the voters, particularly if it was going to be 15 years before there was a next election. So, you know, my spin on this is that the RTA needs to come up with a policy that's much more cohesive and makes more sense for scope revisions. It's just we're now 1 or 2 years away from a vote on this, and I don't think it's going to throw the monkey wrench too much into any of these projects versus if it was only 5 years in. So that's my personal opinion. And Jim Farhad, you might want to have some response to Robin's concern and question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mogimi's.
No, go ahead.
Unmuted.
Jim. I was going to say, go ahead. I know you've been working on this closely, so go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chair, our position is that this is a departure from what is in the stated scope. It is the board's decision as to which how they would wish to handle this. If they feel that it meets the functionality tests, if they feel that they're comfortable with moving forward with it, that is totally their discretion. However, if they feel that in the broader public interest of making sure that there's transparency on this, and they wish to move forward with putting this on RTA Next to confirm it, that would be their position or their choice to do so. This is a policy matter. We can't speak for the board, but we think this is an issue that needs to be addressed by the board. We do have a history of sticking pretty closely to, or in fact, strict adherence to the ballot, with the exception of the Broadway project, in which case the board did take an explicit vote to scope to allow for the change in scope. This may or may not be consistent with it. That would be their choice or their determination to make.
But what I'm hearing is that this particular body is suggesting that that's the best course of action for the Tucson project. And I guess when I read it, it was the minority, and yet now I'm hearing that it's the majority of this group that feels like it should go to RTA Next. Because what you said, Mr. Chair, compared to what I read in the note, was that there was a majority that said that should move ahead. And then in the minority, it said in the minority notes in that letter, it said it should go back to the voters.
Yeah, Robin, at this point, there are no minority comments. That's a blank in the report.
I see.
That's
No, I
a
just
place-
didn't,
yeah.
I don't have the latest one
Right.
then. Thank you.
Right, yeah, it's a placeholder. And there's kind of two issues. One is you guys, the city did, I think, a great job on the public involvement. And my guess is if indeed this does go back to a vote, that it's going to be approved. But we have a level of discomfort of, since we're this close to an election, of not sending it back to the voters to have them approve it. So, your question originally, Robin, I think dealt with the general policy. Are all these scope changes going to have to go back? And that's why I commented, as we're renewing the RTA next, we probably should come up with a more vibrant policy, robust policy. My 2 cents worth.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair, Kurt, I see where Robin might have gotten confused because the draft I'm looking at also has the heading of minority findings before it says task force recommendations.
Okay.
It's as if any are to be added, but we should probably just take that out of there, obviously, to avoid any confusion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, there is one other point of clarification that I would like to make a recommendation to look at. And just, as we've been talking amongst ourselves at staff about RTA Next, and I know we have informally referred to the 5th period of, or the first period after the conclusion of the RTA would be RTA Next period 5. I think that may be perhaps a little bit unclear or misleading. What I would recommend is that we consider changing that to the first period of RTA Next.
Yeah. Okay. Easy
And
done.
if you're okay with that, that would be a minor Scrivener's change that I think conveys the same intent, but puts it in language that would be more commonly understood.
Yeah, without objection from the task force, Jim, we'll make that change and get it back to you. The 2 changes, what John suggested, is important, and I've just looked at it myself, and I can understand why Robin is confused. So, well, not confused. Why she understood it the way she understood it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, also, I think per our process, we were discussing the opportunity for the lead agency to make a formal contribution to the report. Do you have thoughts on how you would want to see that delivered, and if the city is ready at this point to do so?
Well, Jim, what I would suggest is that the city provide a formal or even an informal comment for incorporation into this, or for attachment, depending upon how long or how brief it is. And we can do that in order to keep on some kind of a schedule to get this before the next technical management committee. It would be nice to get that in the next several days or so, if possible. If not, if city staff deems they need to run it up to the city managers or even to the mayor's office, although I hope that doesn't have to happen, we can certainly wait for that as well. So whatever the city feels comfortable with providing, we'll find a way of incorporating it or attaching it to the task force report.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, attachment might be easier this way. We don't have to bring it back to the task force. It'll just become an attachment.
Sure, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, if there's no other comments on this, Robin, is there anything you wanted to comment at this point before we move on to the county's portion?
Well, perhaps Patrick, anything else, Patrick?
Yeah, just to come on, just a question if we had an opportunity then to submit the city's perspective on this. I think it is a critical project that does need to move forward, and we've come up with solutions that can deliver this within ballot while providing the functionality. I know the description changes, but given the critical needs on this corridor, I don't think this is one that we want to delay and put at risk by pushing it into the RTA Next the project outcomes were approved by the voters. We've demonstrated that we can do that. We've gone back to the public. So I think we will be submitting a statement that we would like to see connected to this as this goes up to TMC for consideration.
Great, excellent. Is that something, Patrick, you think you could get to us relatively quickly, within several days? Is that possible?
I think we'll be able to turn something around. We'll want to get it to the TMC meeting. Ortega, obviously being the chair for that, is going to have his perspective, but we can issue, I think, something out of the department.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Okay, that said, I think we're on a good course here for RTA 14 for First Avenue from Grant to River. So that said, let's get on to agenda item 2B, and that will be Mr. Bernal.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, we're talking about First Avenue, Orange Grove to Ina, and similar to Kurt's report, I won't read this, but simply tell you that we have used the same format and have all the basic introductory information about the project scope and history and budget and schedule, et cetera. And our findings are quite similar to the City of Tucson project. We do mention that the cross-section that was proposed for this segment was to expand to a 4-lane facility. And instead, the county is suggesting, well, let me preface this. The county is suggesting that we go to a 3 and 4 lane, but primarily stay with the 3-lane. But I do note in the letter from the county administrator that there's mention that they want to take a much closer look at this project, which I think would be welcome. But I think fundamentally they are finding that there is not a need to add the additional through lane for this segment of the roadway either, for this segment of the roadway, period. The other thing that's noted is, of course, that the modified cross-section, we believe, does adequately conform to the scope change request review criteria that we established for this task force. And we do note, however, and somewhat in contrast to the city project, that we're unaware of any efforts to solicit public input for the proposed change. And I will note in the county administrator's letter, they do acknowledge that there is a significant enough change that they have no objection. In fact, in essence, are saying we do believe this project should go back to the voters under RTA next, given the significant scope change. So our recommendations accordingly are that we do believe that the traffic can be handled by the modified scope. We do note that there is need for some public involvement, given that we're unaware of anything that's taken place to judge the public acceptance or rejection of any modifications to the scope. And we, in fact, are recommending that the project be included in the forthcoming RTA next in the first category, instead of period 5, period 1 of RTA next, and recommend that the technical management committee endorse our findings to the management committee and the RTA board of directors. So that's in essence our report. And I would see if there's any comments from Frank or Bob to begin with.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair John, I noted that in the previous document, we referenced the April 13th technical memorandum from Kittleson, at the end of the supporting documents. And, their April 13th memo did reference RTA 13. Did you want to include that reference here?
Good point, Bob. Yeah, as a matter of fact, we are, in our analysis, I think we relied on the fact that the City of Tucson analysis done by Kittleson actually did cover this particular portion as well and supported the findings that I talked about. So yes, I think we should reference it and attach it as well.
Okay.
I'll have to look, Bob, and see how we incorporated it into the RTA 14 project. We can do it in a similar fashion for RTA 13.
Yeah, it just looked like a line at the last, below the last paragraph of the supporting documents on the RTA 14 document.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see what you're talking about. We'll add some language in there to reference the analysis done by Kittleson and attach it.
Mr.
Anything
Chair,
else?
one thing that I did, and I'm going to perhaps speak for Mr. Crow to an extent on this. We did have it mentioned to us that some of the color rendering on the exhibits, particularly the traffic exhibits, was very difficult to distinguish between red and orange on one of the graphics, the graphic that particularly related to the county project, and we would want to look at that and make sure that we have a better rendering of that for any documents that are publicly presented to the board or to the TMC. So we'll go through that and make sure that the blurring of the colors, if you will, is addressed.
Okay, very good. And Jim, I think your understanding as well as to how we can modify our draft to include reference to the Kittleson report.
Yeah, I want to be really clear that the Kittleson report looks at, it goes into great detail of operational analysis and looking at capacities on the the River to Grant section, not as much on the northern piece, and some of the work that was done on the northern piece and the southern piece, the kind of the more regional modeling was actually done by the PAG staff and supplied to Kittleson. So
Right.
we'll work through it and
Right.
take another look at it and make sure we give credit where it's due and identify the authors of the various work product.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. If there's a better way of just directly referencing the RTA work, we could do that as well, I'm sure. So, okay, thank you. Anything else? Well, similar to what we just did on the City of Tucson project, if there are no other comments, how do the task force members feel about the draft report? Are we set to take a vote on this? And I'd call for a show of hands if we support the current draft as presented with the adjustments that we just talked about. Yes, yes, yes. We have the 4 yeses. Very good. Thank you. Anything further on item 2 that anyone wants to discuss?
Mr. Chair, only that Mr. Crow may wish to weigh in on any further comments from the county perspective.
Sorry, Jonathan. I thought Jim covered all of them.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, just a minor comment and not necessarily something we need to change, but I noticed that, when they're describing in the report, the funding analysis summary, and they describe the 2 different versions or 3 different versions, and they refer to the new updated or the preferred recommendation as a 3 and 4 lane facility. Sometimes it's a little confusing, and I think this is certainly, I think, born true with the Silverbell project, which comes next. And I think if we can be more clear, I think the county's recommendation is to really utilize the existing roadway pavement, and that varies considerably from 3 lanes to 5 lanes along this segment of First Avenue. So maybe an easy way to characterize the county's recommendation and similar projects that are equally not clarified as just existing 3 and 4 lane facility, because I think it introduces some confusion that could be misinterpreted later down the road. And just a suggestion for more, I suppose, for the future. But if we're going to recommend that we keep the existing lane configuration, then maybe use the word existing so that we don't introduce the question of, well, maybe they're suggesting we need to add a fourth lane at some point along this corridor. So just a minor comment. That's all I had.
No, I think that's a worthwhile change, Jonathan. I understand what you're saying. Jim, I just wrote down existing through lane configuration for that final item under the funding analysis summary. Does that work for you?
I believe that would work fine.
Yeah, okay. Good, thank you, Jonathan. Anything else? If not, let's move on to item 3. Jim, you want to take us through that?
Sure, you bet. I actually have a little PowerPoint here to go through here, and I see I now have control. So let's see. Okay, there we go. We do want to address how we want to handle future projects. We have a number of projects that we have been in discussion with our jurisdictional partners on in terms of expansions of these scopes above and what the current configuration is in the RTA plan. We have Harrison Road, which is desired to be developed as a 4-lane divided roadway rather than the existing 2-lane bridge. So it would be, instead of a standalone bridge tied into the existing roadway, it would be a reconstruction of the entire reach between Golf Links and Irvington, expanding it in capacity to a 4-lane facility and building the bridge associated with that. The second is the Silver Bell Road question, where we look at widening to a 4-lane divided section instead of the phase 3 3-lane section. And then the Houghton Road project, which has a component of it that that is being designed presently as a 6-lane facility, and the scope calls for the 6-lane facility to extend down to Golf Links or north to Golf Links and then transition to a 4-lane facility. That was what was scoped originally with the RTA plan. The city is currently designing it 6 lanes all the way to 22nd Street. And they, in fact, had previously widened 22nd Street to Broadway as a 6-lane facility. So they're actually doing this to provide lane continuity. They had optionally improved the section to the north. So just to look at our process, we would be looking at, the city has desired these project changes. They've been certainly the Silver Bell project was formally requested. The Harrison Road project has actually been submitted as an RTA Next project. And we are in design currently with the city of Tucson, and had some correspondence going back to 2010, where the city of Tucson had committed to contributing additional funds for the widening. So looking at our flow chart, we would take that to the board with a recommendation. And these would be scope expansions, and local funding would be offered up on one of the projects. The other project, the other 2 projects, we would be looking at them moving into RTA Next. The first period of RTA Next, I amended this this flow chart so it currently reflects the terminology we'd like to use, and so taking that forward, these would be our recommendations. That Harrison Road be submitted to RTA or for RTA Next. Silver Bell Road would also require additional funding. It has actually currently well underfunded at its current phase. So we would be needing additional funding regardless. And we would be recommending that that be moved into the first period of RTA next. Actually, I said early in RTA next on that in part because one of the things we're going to have to commit to is a substantial amount of archaeology, and that takes its own time. And that may or may not fall into the first period of RTA next. We would certainly hope that it would be as early as we can make it. But at this point in time, the archaeology is substantial and not completed. And then on Houghton Road, we recommend that the project continue moving forward into right-of-way and utility relocations, and that we develop a funding agreement with the city of Tucson to cover the differential. So that would be our recommendation on the expansions. Continuing on, there are a couple of potential scope reductions that we've heard about, but at this point in time, we have no formal requests. The first being 22nd Street, where there may be a desire to retain the 4-lane section. Actually, it's not divided. It's a 5-lane section currently to the west of Keno. And then Houghton Road, on the very north end of it, north of Broadway. Actually, the transition actually goes down as far to the north as 5th Street, and that lane configuration be retained but modernized north of Speedway. The portion between Speedway and 5th Street, or Speedway and Broadway, would be, as I understand it, the current thinking is that would be retained as a 4-lane divided road. But anyway, again, we do not have specific requests at this point. Once we receive them, we would propose to bring them through this process with this committee. So that, Mr. Chair, concludes my presentation on the future projects.
Jim, will you go back to the slide that had the first 3 projects?
Sure.
Please.
Oops.
No.
This one?
Yeah. The question I have, I guess, about Harrison Road is, if it's already submitted for RTA next, is there anything this task force should be doing? Because my impression is that the technical management committee is going to be tasked with reviewing all RTA next projects.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever that happens, I would assume Harrison Road could be incorporated in as part of that. Or is there some reason why we want to deal with it early? I mean, I know you use the word expansion early in RTA next, but that could happen anyway as part of the entire package, right?
It could. I agree. Right now, unless we take action, there's an expectation that we're going to be moving forward with a start of the Tulane Bridge project prior to the conclusion of the current RTA. So what I was hoping was not, this would avoid us going into, call it breach, if you will, on that particular project.
Okay, so this one's the one that involves a bridge that would have to be determined to be whatever lane configuration we come up with. Then is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean the bridge could be a 2-lane of a 4-lane divided bridge structure. It could be any number of different things. I don't mean to presuppose what the design will look like, but right now, as the current plan envisions it is we would have construction started by 2026 on a 2-lane bridge over the Pantano Wash that is lined up with the current roadway.
And we have had formal requests for all 3 of these projects. Is that correct?
Formal in the sense that we did get a letter requesting from the county on Silverbell.
Right.
On Harrison, we did get a request to include it in RTA next in the bigger project scope. And in Houghton, we have design underway, and we will be receiving most likely a a request to negotiate an IGA shortly on that. So that project will likely go to construction within the next 2 years, I would expect. And they're in right of way and utility discussions presently.
Okay. And so the next step for these three would be to be provided similar to what we've just gone through with presentations or supporting information to support the requested change.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we now have, at least on the Silver Bell Road project, 2 of the 3 entities that have interest in it have indicated a desire to move it into RTA next for consideration as a 4-lane facility.
Right.
We could seek out comment from the city of Tucson, which actually has the southernmost component or portion of it. I believe their right of way goes almost up to Sunset Road from El Camino del Cerro. But we would, I think, appropriately seek out comment from the city on that.
Do any of the task force members have any comments on any of these projects that Jim just described? Anything? Well, Mr. DeGroot, looks like, or did you have something, Curtis?
I just had a question, John, as far as schedule on these. Jim, do you have an idea as to schedule?
I do not have a schedule comment on it. One thing I would tell you is that in the agenda for today, we did not list this as an action item, or we specifically stated that this was for review and discussion only. So right. We don't have this. We're not seeking a motion from you at this point. This will, I think, inform your schedule going forward, how frequently you want to meet and what you would be looking for on this, and to if you have opinions on this that you would like to share, we'd like to hear them.
Yeah, okay. My only comment is just to remind everybody is that there will likely be a couple of year overlap between the first RTA and the RTA next. So it's not like anything necessarily is going to be delayed insignificantly if it goes into RTA next. It just opens up more opportunities for voter approval and for additional funding and support. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chair, we also have a comment from Jonathan.
Yes, I was just going to call on him. Jonathan, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick comment. Jim, I thought I heard you a second ago characterizing the Silver Bell project as having support from the county and Marana, the 2 agencies for the 4-lane section. And I think, because I read the letters, that wasn't explicit in either of the letters. They just both said that additional analysis is warranted, but it kind of implied that maybe a less than 4-lane might be recommended.
Mr. Chair, I stand corrected. Mr. Crow is correct on that.
Got it. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Jonathan. All right.
Mr. Chair, just one comment regarding moving forward. If we're looking at Silver Bell Road, I know we had some dialogue early on that there is the major flood control work that is either in a CIP program or in the future CIP program. As it relates to us looking at Silver Bell, would that make sense to get a little background as to, what the intent is from the flood control district as it relates to the improvements related to Silver Bell?
Jonathan, can you comment on that at all?
Sorry. Yeah, no, I agree, Bob. That's a good point, and I'll see if I can follow up with flood control to see if I can nail down whatever plans they may have in the near future, because that, like you said, is critical for the Silver Bell project for sure. So good comment. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for the moment? Yeah, that will have some significant bearing on that project, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on item 3?
John, I just had one last comment. That's on Silver Bell. I brought this up before, that if there are significant flood control improvements along the corridor. It could free up some of the extensive county land that's there for additional development, which then change the travel demand in the corridor. So hopefully that's a consideration also as we move forward.
Got it. Okay. All right. All right. Anything else on item 3? If not, I just have a thought to share with Jim and Farhad going forward. I know that a lot of your meetings are starting to get back to the face-to-face variety. Are you all going to be insistent or at least suggesting that we follow that, or are we okay with staying with this virtual format?
Mr. Chair, it's completely up to you all. As we discussed previously, especially with the summer months coming up, we can offer a hybrid approach. So if anybody's out of town, they're more than welcome to participate remotely, and anybody that wants to be in person, they're welcome to do so.
Great. All right. Very good. Well, unless somebody's got a, real strong position either way, we'll stay with this virtual format, until such time that we think we need to go visit each other personally. How's that?
Yeah, John, on that, I agree with you. To me, one of the big benefits of our work is if we're actually looking at a set of plans like we did under Paul Sella's stewardship, then it's good to be together. It's a little awkward to look at plans when they're up on the screen.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think it's just a lot more convenient, and it will probably have better participation if we stick with this type of a format.
Okay, very good. Yeah, and I was at a meeting yesterday of the county's Transportation Advisory Committee where they noted that having the opportunity for a virtual format does somewhat allow more public involvement as well, at least public is able to listen to what we're discussing during this task force business. So very good. Anything else? Anything from the RTA, Jim or Farhad?
Nothing here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, if there's no other business, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.